Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about 6 summertime baits that you need to have. They're going to be broken up into groups. We're going to talk about shallow fish all the way to deep fish and everything in between. So let's get right into the video. If you have these 6, you'll be catching fish all summer long. So summertime can be a tough time of year to fish. A lot of the fish go offshore. You have to find them out there. They're deeper, but there are fish that stay shallow all summer long. They're resident fish. They never leave. You can catch them shallow as well. The other thing you have, as I talked about in a previous video, is bluegill spawns happening. So bass stay there. There's plenty of food for them to eat during the bluegill spawns. So today's video, I'm going to break it up. There's 6 baits that you need, but there's going to be 3 shallow baits and 3 deep water baits. If you have just these, no matter which depth of water you're fishing, you will be catching fish no matter what. They're the most common baits to use, but they also catch a ton of fish, and they're my favorites to fish with all summer long. I typically target both groups of fish. I'll target deeper ones and I'll target shallow ones. I usually have all of these tied up in a day of fishing and rotate through them at some point, so let's get right into it. We're going to start at 0 foot of water and work our way all the way down to super deep. First one is going to be a frog. I absolutely love a frog all summer long. No matter if the fish are eating on the bluegill spawn, you're out there early in the morning fishing some weeds, lily pads, whatever, or I've even fished out on some lakes that have logs and wood and fished the shade underneath of them and caught fish on a frog as well, because it does a great job imitating bluegills just suspending under that canopy there. It's just an excellent bait to catch fish all summer long, and a frog always catches big ones. If you're fishing shallow, you might not catch as many fish on a frog as you could on something else, but you will catch some of the bigger ones that are up there, and you can cover a lot of water quickly. So I keep it really simple with my frog selection. I use black on sunny days so that it throws that silhouette and they can see that black on the belly, and I throw white on cloudy days so they can see that brighter white against that darker background. Cover a ton of water with it. Like I said, fish everything shallow that looks good. You're going to be fishing for resident fish, so just fish the most obvious types of cover. They're not going to be on some huddled up little rock pile that's off the bank 2 foot or anything like that. They're going to find a giant laydown. There's going to be one fish that lives on it, and you're going to try and trick them into eating this over a real bluegill. So that's what you're fishing for in the summertime. You're not going to be up there blasting hundreds of fish typically like you do pre-spawn spawn, but you still can catch a bunch of fish up there and have great days of fishing, and even catch some huge bass in the summertime fishing a frog. Following up with that bait, typically this is a bluegill spawn bait, but I use it to flip wood as well, just basically imitating bluegills all summer long. I'll flip wood, I'll flip some shaded banks, I'll flip anything. If you find like that's a prime piece of wood that there should be a fish on and you didn't get a bite on a frog, sometimes I'll just flip this in there, and that's just going to be a jig. Specifically black and blue or green pumpkin, I'm going to imitate bluegill varieties of colors, and more importantly, I'm going to throw a cross style trailer so I can swim this jig, but I can also work it along the bottom and fish it slowly through those types of laydowns. More importantly, the shape of the trailer. I have a fat trailer that gives it that wide, flat appearance, just like a bluegill. So that's going to be my second pick there. Those are my 2 go-to search baits for shallow water. And lastly, the Gary Yamamoto Senko on a Wacky rig, on a Texas rig even, but I prefer the Wacky rig this time of year. I'll just throw it and let it sit there. This is a lot of the stuff we fish on our northern fisheries. We throw a lot of frogs and Senkos all summer long just because that's what they eat up here. They feed on a ton of bluegill. We don't have a lot of shad, and that's the type of fishing that we do. We catch a lot of fish less than 6 foot of water all year long, especially in the summer. A lot of our fish don't actually go out in 15 to 25, 30 foot of water like they do on other lakes down south. That doesn't really happen as much. It does happen a little bit, and we'll talk about that in some of the deep baits here, but for the most part, these fish stay relatively shallow, and you can absolutely have a ton of fun all summer long throwing the simple Wacky rig like this. So my selection for my deep water baits is a little bit interesting over the shallow water stuff. Like I said, in the Northeast, we just fish a lot of bluegill eating fish, so we throw a lot of Senkos and frogs, and that's about it. Everything is meant to imitate bluegills, and that's all we're fishing up shallow. We don't throw like a lot of spinner baits in the summer or anything like that. We stick with those general baits. But in the summer, when those fish get deep, we have a lot more options of what we can use up here on some of our lakes, and it shows in the bait selection. The first thing that I'm going to have for a search bait is going to be a deep diving crankbait. This is the 6th Sense C series. I absolutely love this thing for fishing deeper water. And the reason being is it's super easy to pick which crankbait you need. So there's a C6, a C10, a C15, a C20, and a C25. Up here in the Northeast, my go-tos are the C10 and the C15. You want one that goes about 10 to 12 foot of water, which is going to be that C10. You want one that goes about 15 foot of water, which is going to be the C15. If you have some bigger bait fish, bigger fish in general, you can go up to the C20 or even the C25. I don't throw that one as much, but I do own some. I throw it more when I go down south. The two colors that I like to fish this time of year, you're fishing for shad-eating fish this time of year when you're getting offshore. The bait's going to go offshore. That's what those fish are going to eat out there. Like I said, the bluegills will stay shallow. Shad will be out deep. So I'm going shad colors. I'm either going to throw a chartreuse if the water's a little bit dirty, or I'm going to throw just some type of white shad-looking bait whenever I'm fishing around those deeper fish. Those are the two colors that I stick with. I focus more on the depth of the crankbait rather than the color. You could tie the same color on just in 3 different depths, and if you throw the correct depth of crankbait over the right color, you'll catch more fish if your bait is actually hitting down there on the bottom, deflecting off cover, not overly diving into the cover and making it look unnatural. That's why I like to have a few different varieties on at one time. Now let's get into a couple of dragging baits for offshore, fish a little bit finesse, and do some different presentations there. So the first one that I love to throw for offshore fish is going to be the Carolina rig. Now this isn't a length of a leader that I usually use. There's also nothing on this. This was just to tie it up to show you for the video. But I like to use a 1/2 ounce weight most of the time. Occasionally I'll go to a 3/4. 99% of the time I'm going to use a 1/2 ounce weight. The reason that I use the 1/2 ounce weight is because most of the places that I fish here in Pennsylvania, I'm fishing 8 to 15 foot of water is my offshore fishing stuff. It's not like down on Pickwick or any of these other places where there's drawing a lot of current, you're fishing in 20, 25 foot of water. In those cases, I would go with a 3/4 ounce weight. It'll get you down there better. I put on a little glass bead right here, tie on my swivel. A leader, usually I use about 3 to 4 foot, and then your favorite hook at the end. And then the nice part about a Carolina rig is you can put absolutely anything you want on the end. My favorite is a straight tail worm, just because a fish will always eat a straight tail worm. So if you're dragging this on the bottom and you're near fish and you have a straight tail worm, you're gonna get bites. But you can throw lizards, you can throw crawfish style baits, you can throw other types of big worms with ribbon tails and curl tails. Pretty much whatever you want to put on here, you can throw. So your favorite worm, put that on the end and just drag this thing around slowly. When I got into offshore fishing, this is the first bait I started with because it allows you to tell what different types of bottom feel like. You know you're always on the bottom and in the fish's face, and it allows you to put a bait that fish will always eat in front of their face, and your confidence bait of soft plastic of choice. Fish will always eat soft plastics, so it allows you to feel the bottom correctly and put a soft plastic in front of them and catch a lot more bass. And my last bait for summer bass fishing, I catch more bass all summer long besides a Senko on this bait right here. My Northeast guys will know what this is. Southern guys, doesn't get as much love down there, I've seen, but I promise if you start throwing this thing on some of the places you're throwing your deep crankbaits and Carolina rigs, you're going to catch more fish, especially when there's a lot of pressure, and that's going to be a drop shot rig. I absolutely love fishing a drop shot rig. This is probably the most versatile bait for shallow or deep water fishing. You can put an 1/8 ounce weight on here and fish this very shallow, but typically what I do in the summer, 3/16, quarter, or even 3/8, sometimes even a half depending on the current. Typically I'm going to live in that 3/16 to 3/8 ounce range. I'm going to throw a Gamakatsu size 1 split shot drop shot hook if I'm fishing for smallmouth or in open water. That's when I'm going to throw that, and then I'll throw whatever favorite drop shot bait you want to put on here. 4-inch drop shot bait, dream shots, crosstail shads, shad shaped worm, whatever you want. 4.5-inch robo worm, they all work. Just pick one that you like, have confidence in, and put it on there and you'll catch a bunch of fish. Now the versatility of this bait, I will take this hook off and I will put a robo worm rebarb hook on here, which is a Texas rig hook, but it's light wire so you can set the hook on a spinning rod. And I will put a trick worm, a finesse worm, a robo worm of some sort. I'll Texas rig it on there and fish it on deeper grass lines for largemouth bass that are running these weed edges that usually just get flipped at with heavy tungsten weights or big jigs. I'll throw this right on the edge. It will not get stuck in the grass. I can fish it naturally, and I'll catch fish on those weed lines that they're not seeing baits like this down there on the bottom. So I absolutely love throwing this. I usually throw it on 8-pound test leader, and then I'll have 15-pound test braid on my spinning rod. But I usually run about an 18-inch leader this time of year. Again, this was just for the video, so that's probably not how long I would put it, but that wouldn't be a bad one right there. Typically about 18 inches is where you want to be. These fish will suspend a little bit more in the summer, and they'll be a little more willing to like chase off the bottom for a bait. Just pick your favorite plastic, one of those 2 hooks, and your right size weight, and I promise fish this thing around out deep, fish it slow, you will catch a ton of fish on this bait. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video talking about my top 6 baits for summer bass fishing. I will start throwing these in the month of June all the way through September. They work all year long throughout the entire summer. And if you want to see my top 3 baits for July, which I'll be throwing right now, go ahead and check this video out right here. And then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. And thanks for watching.